welcome to the YwR podcast and welcome to our very, very first episode. Today I have a very special guest with me, somebody who was with me at my most vulnerable time. We're going to talk all about pregnancy, all about birthing. We're going to break certain misconceptions and preconceived notions that people have. And I have with me the very lovely Nikita Aggarwal, who is a doula and who was my doula at birth. We're going to talk all about what a doula is, if you're wondering what a doula does during pregnancy and birthing, and everything else around pregnancy. Hi Nikita, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you for joining us today. So why don't we start off with tell me something about yourself.
So I'm a mother of 2 kids, and having kids was not a plan that I ever had, but then do plans really work? So I gave birth to my first one almost 7 years ago, and my whole experience of being pregnant, like the way I gave birth and, family support and all of that, it was so intense and transformational, and I was so ill prepared during the whole process that it just felt so right to really dive into this work and support other women. Internally, there was something that was telling me that what was happening and how this pregnancy was being approached in hospitals was not right. And I did my own research. I looked online. I found a doula and a place to give birth in Delhi, which had like a water birthing facility. And I had a doula. I had a supportive care provider. I was laboring in water. And despite all of that cushioning around me, I felt my postpartum was so difficult. So many other women don't even have that. And that's when I decided that, I don't want to be going back to my corporate job and I want to do this. I want to support women. I did not know how. But I was so lucky that when my son was 1 year old, my doula decided to start a training program because she wanted other women to also do this work with her. And so I got myself trained to become a birth doula, and then I certified as a LAMA, certified childbirth educator later.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of information. You spoke about water birth, and I'm sure that's a very new concept. Even in India, I think a lot of people have not heard of it. Then about doula. Now talking about doulas, there are a lot of preconceived notions which I spoke about earlier. So I knew about doulas because my sister had a midwife and then she had a doula for her birth. But a lot of people, when I told them that I have a doula, they asked, oh, so what is a doula? Is it a daima? Because I think earlier, like in maybe my grandmother or great-grandmother's time, there was a time when women used to not go to hospitals. They used to have babies at home, and they may not have even had a doctor at home. But people assume that this is the kind of person who's coming to you, who's not educated, and just like some daima is coming. So what is a doula, and what is the role of a doula during your pregnancy and 2, during childbirth?
So yes, there are a lot of preconceived notions about doulas. First of all, people don't know who a doula is, and they don't even know how to pronounce it. So when I say I'm a doula, and they raise their eyebrows and they're like, are you a doula? Are you a doula? What is it that you do? And then I explained that I am a birth support worker. I'm a birth companion. And they said, oh, we thought that, these things exist in the Western world. We didn't know India had these things. I said, well, they've been here for over 2 decades. And so it's really surprising for them. That's one. And a lot of people who've already had children, they're like, oh, I wish I knew about it. And I would have asked for help. So there's clearly that need for women to be supported by other women, because women were never supposed to give birth alone. And in the times, our grandmothers and even a generation before them, women were supported by other women of the family who had given birth. And then there would be a local dai who was basically someone who had learned from another dai just to be able to catch babies and, create that safe space. They were not medically trained, but they learned the skills through other women. Right? And however, so there was that dai who was there in the space when home births were happening, whereas the birthing woman was supported by other women of the families, right? And those were the true doulas, right? So they were either their own mothers, their sisters, an aunt or a friend, sister-in-law. And there was this group of women who would support the woman throughout labor and birth. Unfortunately, as births started to move from home to hospitals, this very real visceral knowledge that birth happens safely was lost. And that's when, all the fear and all the anxiety started to creep in. Our mothers are really the first ones to jump and, react when we want to do things differently. And so births now was started to be perceived as these really, like dangerous, experiences which needed medical help. And, there is no way a woman can give birth without a doctor's support. And in fact, they believe that it's the doctor who's delivering the baby, and it's not the mother who's giving birth. And that whole loss of that experience, that information, that visceral knowledge is why doulas exist now. So doulas are basically professionally educated birth companions who provide physical, emotional and informational support to their clients throughout pregnancy, labor, birth and postpartum. Our skills do not entail any medical decision making or any medical support, and that is the role of a medical care provider. So if you ask me who a doula is really a female birth companion who's holding a birthing woman's hands as she's bringing another life into this world.
And also giving her lots of massages.
Yes.
So that brings me to my next question. You said that doulas are not medically trained. So in my realm of knowledge, so there's a doctor, there's a midwife, and there's a doula. So the midwives are medically trained, right?
Yes.
And the doctors, of course, are medically trained, but I think the doctors tend to do a lot more medical intervention because that is their training. Midwives tend to do a little bit less, and they try and push for as natural as it could be. And the doulas are then there to support you with everything. So would you recommend someone to just have a doula for their birth and no doctor and no midwife?
So it's, truthfully speaking, births work. Like births, and a woman giving birth really doesn't need anyone to be able to give birth. However, there's always a safety net that's needed because births are unpredictable. Okay. Now, if you were to ask me that is a doula alone in the room, is it safe for a woman to give birth? Well, no, because births, like I said, are unpredictable. In most scenarios, births work and they don't really need any outside support. But there are those really small cases where the mother or the baby may need help, medical help. And doulas are not the people who can do that for the mother and the baby. Doula's role is only to physically, emotionally support the mother while she is in labor, because labor is an intense experience. She definitely needs a person who is medically trained, either a doctor or a midwife, to be present in the room to be able to safely give birth to a baby. That's my personal view.
That brings me to my next question about home birth and my experience and our experience of my labor and childbirth. And the thing is, when I was having my baby, I chose not to tell anybody about the kind of, I think you, the doctor, my husband and just my immediate family were the only people who knew what exactly was happening. We were, of course, oscillating between having a home birth, having a hospital birth. And a lot of people, the first time I remember when I spoke to a friend about it, they said, oh my God, you're thinking of a home birth? How could you even think about it? What if there is a medical emergency? So I wanted to maybe discuss about our experience of the home birth, and also what precautions we had taken, because a lot of people think of it as something that's a very reckless behavior. They're like, oh, you had a home birth? How could you even think about it? What if you needed, a C-section, or what if you had an emergency? And I think at some point during the birth, it did get to a point where we were just like, do we need to transfer to the hospital at this point? But one is, we had you. When you said that you need somebody in your family, my husband was there, my sister was there with us who's had 2 kids, and we had a doctor with us throughout. And you don't have this luxury in the hospital, right? In hospitals, the doctors come, they check on you, and they just go sit in their room or go back home, and then they'll come when they have to come to catch the baby. That is the role of the doctor, right? Unless you have to have a lot of medical intervention. So we had an amazing Dr. Manjari with us through the almost 40 hours. She was there for at least half of those hours. I don't know any doctor who will be there for one whole day with you, waiting for you to labor, waiting for you to dilate slowly. So how was your experience as a doula for that birth?
It was very intense. Intense because, we all approach births with a certain mindset. Despite having supported births myself, in the past, it's the same physiology. It's the same, like the same process. But each birth is so different from the other.
Yeah.
And the experience of your birth was definitely so intense for everyone because it was really long. At some point, all of us needed a break because, it was it was really slow. But I think the only person who was never getting tired was you. So I really truly believe that you of course needed all of those people in the room during labor, because it was a really long and intense process for you. But I think you were the one who really made it happen. Honestly, you had the safety net. I still remember, and I still tell everyone, and it makes me very emotional. You never said it once, I cannot do this, I need help.
Yeah, I think birth is so much mental than physical, right? You have to really prepare yourself mentally to be able to go through it. For one, I worked out every single day. So, which is why I thought, okay, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing meditation, I'm breathing, I'm lifting weights, I'm going cycling, I'm walking, I'm doing all of this. My birth is going to be so quick. But then it's so unpredictable, right? I feel like my body is so equipped to deal with it, and my baby will just slide through and come out. But it was very, very long. I know that first time moms take some time, right? There are some moms, like I have a friend who had a baby in an hour and a half since she started her labor. But most first time moms take a long time. And do you think that hospitals are probably not patient enough to wait for them to go through the process? Or do you think that the moms get tired and they're just like, listen, that's it, I can't do this anymore, just cut me open?
So I think it's a combination of both. Because yes, labor is intense. It is intense physically. It is intense emotionally. Unfortunately, hospitals have their own protocols. They need to have a turnaround time when the room is now available for the next mother. They have that pressure of quickening up the process and getting the family out so that the next one can come in. They do have that. Plus also, they have a very archaic method of looking at labor progress, right? They plot the contractions on a graph, and the mother is supposed to dilate 1 centimeter every hour, which is like a really archaic method of looking at progress, which has been debunked and is not evidence-based anymore.
But that is something that was confusing me, because I know that the progress was supposed to be 1 centimeter every hour, and I was progressing at 1 centimeter every 3 or 4 hours. So every time the doctor would check, it would be like, oh, now it's 2 centimeters. And after 4 hours, oh, now it's only 3 centimeters. So beyond a point, it's something that, you feel like, what, I have labored for so long and that's it. That's all I have progressed. How much more time is it going to take? But then it then boils down to your body and your mind, right? How prepared are you to deal with such a long labor? And do you have the endurance and the stamina for it? There are a lot of techniques that people do to be prepared for delivery and labor specifically. One is, you are a Lamaze certified practitioner. So what is Lamaze and what do you do for Lamaze?
So Lamaze is a childbirth education philosophy which basically educates the parents about especially the mother, about her own body, about the physiology of birth, how birth works, what are the changes happening in the pregnancy. Especially it focuses on the fact that this is a process that is blueprinted in your body, right? And it is basically a reminder to the mother that you have it in yourself to be able to grow this baby and give birth to this baby. And that reminder is in the form of very in-depth classes which are based on latest evidence. So Lamaze classes focus on pregnancy, they focus on labor and birth. How do you cope with contractions? It focuses on medical interventions, what are the different medical interventions that are available? What is right? What are the pros? What are the cons? How do you decide what is it that you need if you do need medical help during birth? It then also focuses on breastfeeding and postpartum care for the mother. So it from the time of the pregnancy to postpartum, Lamaze covers the entire spectrum of the experience and the process that's going to unfold for this family, right?
So, sorry to interrupt, but would you say that it's similar to a Garbh Sanskar that Indians probably teach you? I didn't do a Garbh Sanskar course, so I don't know. I did a hypnobirthing course, which I feel like is a westernized version of yoga, meditation and childbirth education, because there were a lot of meditations and visualizations which I teach during my prenatal yoga sessions. So if you have any experience in Garbh Sanskar, do you think eventually everything is the same and it's just important for the mother to educate, or the parents actually, or the family to educate themselves about pregnancy, childbirth, and then postpartum?
So there is a difference. Garbh Sanskar and Lamaze are not the same. Like I said, Lamaze is educating oneself, whereas Garbh Sanskar is educating the unborn child. Okay, so Garbh Sanskar is a very is deeply rooted in the Indian culture and mythology. Especially if you would remember, there is this part in the Mahabharata where Abhimanyu is, he listens to the conversation happening between his parents, and he's able to follow the instructions given, and is, during the war, and is able to get out of that, those circle of soldiers. Now that is prenatal bonding and educating the unborn child, right? And that is completely different from educating oneself about our own bodies, about the process of labor and birth, about the physiology, how do you support the birthing process, and and all of these aspects, when you understand so well, will help you address all the inbuilt fear and anxiety, because there is that narrative, that labor is hard, that it is painful, that you need medical help, that you really can't do it alone or yourself, or the doctor will do your delivery. I really like this because, it's so funny when I hear that, I have chosen this doctor who will do my delivery. And I tell mothers that, do you know that only pizzas are delivered and babies are born? The doctor is going to support you as you give birth to your baby, right? So there are two different things. Garbh Sanskar is, like I said, is educating the unborn child. Lamaze, on the other hand, is educating oneself. And Lamaze is based on latest evidence. It is based on respect. It is based on, giving the choice to the family, to the couple, at they themselves, and knowing very well what are the pros and cons of various aspects or medical interventions. They are the ones who are really in control and taking charge and deciding what is it that they'd like to do with their own bodies and their babies.
Let's talk about home births. Given a choice, what would you choose? Home birth or hospital birth?
I would choose the mother, because home birth, hospital birth is something that the mother has to decide. There could be a mother who has heard about a home birth and really wants to have a home birth, but internally she's really feeling scared about this, right? And she decides to labor at birth at home, and then she kind of like freaks out, No, then
and
home birth is not.
That's very, very normal, because even for me to take that decision to have a home birth, it took some time. I think we decided only in week 36 or 37 that, let's just go for a home birth, and we had a hospital on standby and all of that. But yeah, it takes some thought.
Yes. And preparation.
Yeah.
Yes. So the choice is between a home and a hospital birth is absolutely on the mother. She needs to feel right about the decision she's making, and as a doula, my role is then to support her decision, right? And if you were going to ask me what's the difference between a home birth and a hospital birth, well, hospitals, when you are laboring and giving birth in a hospital, then you have to abide by certain protocols that the hospital has. So in a hospital, for example, you will have medical staff coming in and out of the room, because they are medically bound to note down certain, parameters of progress of labor, like mother's physical health, the baby's, how's the baby heartbeat doing. They have to make that, follow that due diligence as a part of the process, right? So there will be certain sort of protocols and medical interventions, or maybe people coming in and out of the room, which doesn't happen in a home birth. Home birth is that you are in your own space. And as a doula, I do see that, I feel that difference in the space when you are in a hospital, right? A hospital room is a hospital room, whereas, you're giving birth and laboring in your own space, which is familiar, which is comforting, which is your own. Whereas when you're in a hospital, it is, it's sanitized and it's clean and it's white, and, there is a hospital bed. So
mostly people are in hospital gowns also.
And hospital gowns, right? So it internally, I'm sure it must shift something in the mother. When you are in a hospital, there would be some shift there happening. Whereas when you're in your own space and doing it in your own space, the feeling and, it would be different for the mother. But if I was to choose between the two, I'm going to choose the decision that the mother makes based on how she is feeling about it.
So do doulas only support So I don't want to say normal births, I would say vaginal births or natural births. Or do they also support C-sections?
I've just answered that question. Doulas support mothers. As doulas, we don't have any biases or any agendas. Our role is to support the mother in how she would like to bring this baby. It could be a natural birth with no medical interventions. It could be a birth with an epidural. It could be a C-section. My role as a doula is to meet the mother where she is. My role is not to drag her to a point where it serves my agenda. Okay, so no, I support births of all kinds. I support mothers in whatever they'd like to do, because doula is supposed to support the mother, not the birth.
So let's talk about specifically what a doula does during labor and delivery, because we know the doctor is there to catch the baby, but the doctor is not always there throughout your labor. So what does a doula do with the mother or with the family during the time that the woman starts to labor?
The early part of the labor, which is called early labor, is a really long and slow process. It can go on for a few hours to sometimes even few days, and it's an absolutely most of the times easily manageable part of the labor process. So usually doulas or I join in my clients when the labor is well established, and that's when they are typically in active labor, when they're about 5 or 6 centimeters dilated, because even after that it takes a few hours for the birth to happen. Yeah. So if I am a client's doula and this birth is happening at, say, a home or a hospital, I would be joining them as and when the mother feels that now she would like that extra layer of support as she's now going through these surges. So my role as a doula during the labor process is to make sure that the mother is comfortable, she's hydrated, she's eating small bites, she has the energy to go through labor. My role is to keep the environment calm. It is to encourage the mother and encourage her to go through each surge. My role is to massage. My role is to help her get into different positions and really encouraging her to get in touch with her own physical self, because it's really the process is happening in the mother's body and she is feeling each surge and each movement of the baby. Most of the times the mother knows what position she'd like to be in during labor, because that's helping her feel better, right? So my role is to help and cocoon that entire space and keeping it positive, keeping it calm, just be that emotionally available person, both for the mother as well as the partner. So yeah, that's my role. So that's what I do.
Okay, nice. Okay, so let's talk about home births specifically and how we prepared for the home birth scenario, because a lot of people have asked me a lot of questions. I remember when I first told people that I had a home birth, the first question was what, why, and then how, and what if something went wrong. So I think it's important to talk about the kind of preparation that went into one decide to do a home birth, and then what were the kind of backups that we had. So first let's talk about the preparation during pregnancy. So one, let's talk about your role as a doula, as our doula, and how you prepared us for it.
Usually I do 2 prenatal meetings with my clients. It is so important for the especially the birthing woman to have this really comfortable and trustful relationship with a doula, right? If I was to just show up on the day of the birth and when you're at your most vulnerable, you're not going to be able to trust me, right? And you will in fact feel uncomfortable in my presence. So my role as a doula during the prenatal meeting is to make sure that I have this really, lovely, trustful relationship with my clients. Also, each family has its own unique emotional needs of how they would like to be supported. So support can mean different things from different women, right? Some women may not have any fear of pain, like you didn't have any fear of pain. That's not even once that came up. But some women do have that. So I understand with my clients where is this family at and how they will like to be supported. And as a part of the process, I also use some tools called, like birth art, walking through the labyrinth, connecting with your baby, where, we help the couples connect with the unborn child, and maybe even draw sometimes, and really imagine what the baby is doing in the womb. It is so important for some families to connect with the unborn baby, because that connection is just not happening, right? Whereas pregnancy, labor and birth is a communication which is happening at all times at the physical and emotional level between the baby and the mother.
Yeah.
So my role during prenatal period is just to get to know my clients better, for them to know me better as a person, and then also for me to understand what are the dynamics, what are the needs of this mother and of this her partner, and how I can address them during labor and birth.
And also for home birth specifically, especially in our case, because I know very few people who have had home births. So one is that we were not reckless. We had a doctor, we had a doula, we had my sister, my partner, and we had a hospital which was 3 minutes away in case, there had to be certain medical emergency. So for all home births, would you recommend to definitely have a hospital on standby?
Absolutely, because in all likelihood, births will work if left on their own, right? Yeah. But there can be those really small cases where mothers and babies do need medical help. And in that case, there should always be a backup hospital that's close enough in case there is a medical emergency and the mother needs to be transferred. The medical care provider, which in our case was an obstetrician, Dr. Manjari, she would not have waited for things to get really out of control and then take a decision that the transfer was needed. So as a care provider with years of experience, she would have read some signs that this birth is going to need medical help. That's number one. Even taking a step back, I know that she has like a really stringent lens of deciding who is a right candidate for a home birth. So not all families should be opting for home births for the reasons of medical help, what is the medical status of the woman during pregnancy, and all of those factors, but also really the mindset.
Yeah.
When you are taking charge and taking ownership of your own birth, then of course you are a good candidate for a home birth. And apart from, of course, the mental readiness, we need a medical care provider. It could be a doctor or a midwife, a home birth midwife, who is bringing that medical skill set into the room. And apart from that, we do need a backup hospital and a backup doctor as well sometimes, so that in case there is a need for the mother to be transferred, we can do that.
I remember talking to a friend of mine who had a home birth, and she is one of the people that inspired me to even think about having a home birth. And she said that the thing is, when you do a home birth, you have to be responsible. When you go to the hospital, the doctor is responsible. That is the only difference. The birth, you are anyway birthing the child, but at home you take complete responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's your call. In the hospital, it's the doctor's call. That's the only difference, actually, come to think of it. And 4 months after having a baby, now I can say that I'm so glad that we chose to do it the way that we did. I don't think I would be as happy doing the same thing in a hospital, or I don't think the experience of labor would have been the same had I been in the hospital, because here we could go to a garden, walk in that garden. I remember at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, you were telling me to squat, and we were doing lunges and all these kinds of things. But I definitely think that training and preparing for birth helped, because I remember at one point you told me, listen, don't overdo it. You're going to get tired. And I looked at you and said, I don't get tired.
Yeah.
But for pregnancy and childbirth, are there any books that you recommend your clients to read?
My recommendation would definitely be this book called Birthing from Within, which is a beautiful, beautiful take on pregnancy and birth. And the other one would be Anna May Gaskin's book,
Guide to Childbirth.
Guide to Childbirth. That's also a really beautiful book to read, because these books basically tell you that the process is happening within you. You need to trust your body, because unfortunately, as women mostly, we have been taught not to trust ourselves, not to trust our feelings, and it as children, as young girls, and then we become women, we don't have that faith in our own selves. And when we don't trust ourselves, we're not going to trust ourselves when it comes to labor and birth. Someone who's not trusted themselves ever, and you tell that woman, trust your body when you are giving birth, she's not going to be able to trust that process at all. So that that is the part of the journey, right? And reading these books, cutting out the noise of horror stories when it comes to labor and birth, it's so important.
Yeah.
However, we need to take ownership of our births in our own hands, and we can do that by educating ourselves and preparing ourselves emotionally by speaking with women who have had empowering births like you. Listening to those kind of birth stories and not just listening to stories of emergency C-sections.
Yeah, no, I remember that when I was preparing for birth, I read a lot of stories of women, and I think Ina May Gaskin's book has a lot of stories of women's experiences of having babies, not necessarily just vaginal births, but also C-sections. And I remember talking to a lot of friends and friends of friends about their experience of having babies. I spoke to somebody in the UK who tried to have a home birth and then had to transfer to hospital for a C-section. I spoke to a friend of mine who had a home birth. My sister had 2 hospital births. They ended up being water births, but she had not explored the option of having a home birth. But I think towards the end of my pregnancy, I just did not want to hear anything. I did not want to know anybody's experience. I just wanted to be in my cocoon, be in my shell, keep my mind and my sanity intact and just focus on myself. And I think that talking to women really, really helps. Talking to women who have had babies really, really helps. Understand their experience and also know what is a hospital protocol and what doctors recommend. The thing is, even before we decided on a home birth, we went to 3 or 4 hospitals to decide which hospital we wanted to choose. And we were consulting with one doctor for at least 8 months of our pregnancy, which is a long time. And then we switched to the home birth doctor only in week 36 or week 37 of pregnancy because of certain protocol that people suggest and people do. But I think that, being centered and being in yourself towards the end of pregnancy is very, very helpful. At least it was helpful for me to not hear that extra noise and not be scared to think that, okay, if she had this experience, then I will have that experience. Or if she had such a beautiful experience, I will also have a beautiful experience. And I think we sometimes set ourselves up for failure by thinking that I don't want to have this particular outcome. And then if you do have that particular outcome, then it probably gets you into a phase where you feel like, I couldn't do this in this certain way that I wanted to do it. So then and your hormones are all over the place after pregnancy. And that sometimes I think leads to postpartum depression. So I think that even when we had our prenatal meetings, I remember you asking me this question that, you're working out and you have this yoga YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. And I think there are expectations. And I've seen this from comments on my YouTube channel. People said, oh, you're doing so much yoga. So did you have a normal birth? So many people have asked me this, and I think in my head I was prepared for all kinds of scenarios. But I think people would have said, oh, itna yoga kiya fir bhi C-section hua. That is the kind of mentality that people have. But I think it's important for us as women to understand that it is your body and your baby's safety that matters the most. And irrespective of whatever the outcome of your birth is, whether you have a vaginal birth, whether you have a C-section, whether you have a elective C-section, whether you have a emergency C-section, whether your baby is breech and your baby came out breech, it is important that you and your baby are safe. That is the most important thing. And I think that because we expect so much out of this labor, we set ourselves up for failure in a way. So to have low expectations, I think, is very, very important. Or to be realistic and say that anything can happen during labor, anything can happen during delivery, and I need to be prepared for it. And I think that's what childbirth classes prepare you for.
Exactly. So I started off by saying that births are unpredictable. It truly is the baby's choice when it comes to that, how this baby wants to come. Yeah. And as a role of, as a mother who's experiencing that process in her physical body, we need to support that experience, both for the mother and the baby. Now, just to tell you a little bit about my story, I had a normal birth the first time, and I had a C-section the second time, which was a medically needed C-section. I was already a doula by then, and my birth experience from both those births was so different. I was a much happier person after having had the C-section because I was so well supported. I felt very well supported through that journey, and it was an emergency C-section for me. So birth outcome doesn't matter. What matters is how you are experiencing that outcome, right? And that is what prenatal preparation is. First of all, the childbirth education classes will tell you this is what physically happens in your body, right? It also then tells you that births can take any turn, and that is what we did in the walk of the labyrinth, because there are so many twists and turns in the birth that ultimately it's the baby's decision to decide how is this baby going to come. So it is very, very important for women to prepare themselves for the journey, not the outcome. Yeah. Because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Yeah. I've had mothers who wanted me to be their doulas because they were looking for a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after a previous cesarean, right? Mm-hmm. And some of those women had these really, like they were stuck in their heads that I will like nothing but a natural birth this time. And those are the women who I have to work the hardest with, because I have to help them loosen their grip on this outcome, because you cannot get, as a doula, as a doctor, or even a woman who's prepared really hard for a birth, no one can guarantee you a certain outcome. What we can guarantee you is a supported birth, and then whatever happens, and that is what we can promise. And I think that's what women really need to work towards.
Yeah. So do you have any interesting birth stories to share with us as your experience of being a doula?
So this birth was in early 2019, and so this mother truly wanted to give birth in water. She wanted a water birth, but that hospital had never facilitated a water birth. So we helped set up the birth pool for them, and the doctor said, okay, I will let you labor in water, but I will not let you give birth in water. Mm-hmm. So I remember I got a call from them that we've reached the hospital, can you come? And I joined them at the hospital, and I saw that the hospital staff was struggling to kind of set up the pool and inflating the pool and filling it up, and the mother, she was like going through these really strong surges, and she, with every surge, she was like shivering, like physically shivering out of control. And I realized that her body is so deeply in the process of being in labor. However, it is just not opening because she's not in the pool. So in her head, she had decided that it has to be in the pool, right? Like she had to labor in the pool. And I took her out of the room, and I said that, let's just go outside to another room. We don't have to be in this room at this moment, because there were 10 people trying to set up the pool, and this mother was like shivering with every surge. I took her out. We gave the hospital staff about half an hour to set up the pool. When they told us it's all ready, we walked her back in. We got her into the pool, and I think within the next 2 hours, from being 3 centimeters, she was boom 10 centimeters.
No way.
Yes.
I want to be that person.
Can you imagine? Just she, it's all happening in our bodies, but it's also so much of it is happening in our heads, right? And she was holding her labor back because she wanted to be in the pool. And the moment she was in the pool, she went to 10 centimeters. She didn't tell anyone. She had the urge to push because she was really creating that space that the doctor will not know, and she'll give birth in the water, right? That's another story that the doctor did discover that she was fully dilated, and that's when she was then moved to labor and delivery room, and her labor slowed down after that. She took almost 3 or 3.5 hours to give birth late after that.
Oh, so she did not deliver in the water eventually?
Because that was the deal with the doctor, that you will labor in water, but you will not give birth in water, right? But the woman, that mother, held on to her body, her tissues, because she wanted this to happen in water. And the moment she was in it, she just let go. So it's really, the word is to let go and to surrender to that process.
And I think my child just wanted to test my body limits and my mind limits. So my child was like, Mama, you keep laboring. I will take my time.
Because you said I don't get tired.
You don't get tired. Let me see if you don't get tired. Cool. So I'm going to end this with one last question, which you and I both will take turns answering. If there was one piece of advice that you wanted to give a pregnant woman, what would that be?
You're consciously bringing this baby to this planet. And I think that mothers need to look at this experience and this journey as the breaker of the cycle. of cycle of neglect, cycle of trauma, cycle of all of us have some issues in our childhood. So as a mother who is now bringing this new life on this earth, I think it is so important for that mother to take on to the role of the breaker of the cycles and do everything that she feels is right for this baby. And that definition can be different for any mother. And it's just that we need to do everything so consciously, right? Take every decision based on your internal conscious. So no answer is right here, like choosing a C-section or choosing an epidural, choosing a natural birth. There is no right definition. Yeah. But the answer is do it with consciousness and awareness. And I think the baby feels everything. Every bit of it the baby feels.
Yeah. The amazing thing was that when I was pregnant, I also had two of my closest friends who were pregnant at the same time. And we had our babies with one friend within 3 days of each other, and my other friend within 7 weeks. And all three of us had such different experiences, one during pregnancy and during childbirth. And we all had such different decisions that we made about our childbirth, that it just feels like if three of us had such different experiences, imagine the experiences that so many other women have. And I think that the advice that I would give was, from my experience, I really trained for pregnancy as an exam. And I would read up a lot. I asked a lot of questions to the doctors, to my friends, to my sister, because I just wanted to have the information and equip myself with information. So I think that my advice would be just read and understand what happens during pregnancy, or enroll for a class, and also get all the support you need for postpartum period. Because I think that we read up so much about pregnancy and childbirth that sometimes after the baby is born, we're just like, okay, now what? What do I do with this human that is now that I have to take care of? And it's a very overwhelming experience, because one is you're healing, you are in pain. If you've had stitches or tears, everything is hurting. You're new to breastfeeding. Everything just comes together at one time, and you're not getting enough sleep, so you're just angry and irritated and all of these things. So I would say that it's so important to get help and to have people. And sometimes I feel like so many people don't have that, and that makes such a big difference to your postpartum experience. But yeah, so prepare and get all the help that you can get would be my advice. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Nikita. It's been great, and I hope that mothers, pregnant women find this informative and it helps them make the choices for themselves during pregnancy and during labor, during delivery. Yeah. And I think it was an amazing experience having you with us during our most vulnerable time. And I hope that many more women are able to benefit with having a doula, either in a home birth setup or in a hospital setup, if the hospital allows it. And I hope that this allows a lot of women to be more responsible for the choices that they make, and not just give away the choices that they have to the doctor, or the decisions to be made to somebody else about their own bodies.
Absolutely. I think it is so important, because we're likely going to have, like limited number of children. We can't really repeat this experience for the sake of it. Yeah. It is so important to take that charge and make those decisions yourself, because it is going to impact your parenting and your mothering journey. And I think that women definitely are the most vulnerable during birth, as well as their strongest selves. So they just need that safety net around them. And I think that all women have the capability to give birth the way nature intended, with love and with support.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope that you have learned a little bit, and stay tuned for lots more coming up on Yogalates with Rashmi.